Let's go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zephyr's Adjusted for Risk podcast from the shores of Lake Tahoe. I am Ryan Nauman, the market strategist here at Zephyr. In today's world, investors demand more insights and information than just returns from the investments they decide to put their money behind. They want transparency in the investment process, the asset management firm, the holdings, and personnel, and they want it to be personalized and timely. To stay relevant and competitive in this market, asset management firms must understand and address these demands when presenting and distributing their product stories in order to capture the attention of financial advisors or current clients or potential new ones in their quest to grow assets under management. Well, I have the perfect guest on who can share some expert advice regarding this subject. But first, today's episode is sponsored by the award-winning Zephyr, which helps investment professionals make more informed investment decisions. I'd like to give a very warm welcome to Trisha O'Donnell, who is the founder and CEO of Investment Management Support Solutions, or IMSS. So, Trisha, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an honor to have you on. I'm really excited for this conversation. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and IMSS?
So I started in the industry back in 1996. I was doing institutional sales and marketing, so the whole gamma from marketing presentations, fact sheets, databases and whatnot. So I had worked through two firms up through early 2017 when the two partners of the second firm I was at retired and decided that consultant databases is a big segment of this market. And so I decided to branch off and do solely consultant database work with investment firms. Being on the sales and marketing side, we didn't get paid unless we sold business. Part of that was consultant databases to get visibility, the RFP side of it. So everything sort of tied together. So I understood how important it was. So I started the firm in 2017, fast forward to, expedite, streamline the work on the managers and expedite our process of reporting. I built Datacentrics, which is our proprietary information technology. So managers use the platform, upload all their information, and we go and process everything out. We're a little bit different in that we're very client service driven. So we're an end-to-end product. It's an end-to-end service. We're not product. You're just buying a platform. You're getting a team. And so we're just a little bit different in how we do things.
Fantastic. I love that you're client service oriented. It's so important, I think, today. I hate to say this, I go out to eat or something or go somewhere and just client service or support or service in general. It's like, gosh, what has happened? So I love that you're focusing on client service and support. That's fantastic.
Yeah, our clients love it.
Perfect. The asset management space is as competitive as ever. As there's different type of investment offerings growing, it seems like, by the day, and expanding, giving financial advisors and their clients more options. What are some ways asset managers can stand out from the crowd and effectively market their strategies to reach their AUM goals?
One of the things, as small as it may seem, is, the marketing materials are professional looking, right? The fact sheets, the website, business emails. We work with all types of managers. So we see different gamuts of things. And, we had a recent manager that we were trying to get him onto one of the largest platforms out there, but because they didn't have an actual business email, they wouldn't accept them. So that's a lost opportunity. Have them get their domain, they're setting up the website. So having some of those things, I think make investors take you seriously, right? You're a serious business. Another piece of that is like the messaging that they send, being really clear and consistent about who you are, why you're unique, what sets you apart from the pack, right? Because, there's so many managers out there, why are you different? And, I think in any business, what is that value add? We do it every day here. Like, why do we stand out against a competitor? And it just needs to be a compelling story and, really sharing the value add and why you're different. And, another part of that is we always talk about visibility, right? Within the consultant databases, creating these profiles that build, increased visibility is going to put you on the map in the peer group. If you're not doing them to the level you need to, you're going to screen out of a search against, your peer group as if you're not even there. So those are like some of those really, strong
Mhm.
pieces that we talk about. And then networking. And we all know that networking is strong. It's not just out there, marketing your products, it's connecting with colleagues and other, industry professionals and organizations that can really help, build the brand and, bring out your message.
That's fantastic, Trisha. You're exactly right. You open that answer up with it's simple, right? But that professionalism, having a professional website and email, when I started, and now this industry's changed a whole lot. I don't know if there's many financial advisors out here that wear a full suit anymore. It's gotten much more casual. But when I started, we had to wear a full suit, and it was in Seattle where not many people wore suits back then. But the manager of our firm was like, we manage money. We manage all these people's money, a lot of money. We need to be professional about it and, look professional and act professional and so on. So it's still there, maybe in a different way as
Right.
people are a little bit more casual in their appearance, but you still have to have
Exactly.
that professionalism.
No, I agree. The appearance side of it, I think, is just much more casual, which I think is great. Loosen
Yeah.
the ties, but it's really the other components of that. Like we talked about the websites and those things that really are compelling, and they do make you look like you are a professional firm.
Hmm. Yep. You brought up storytelling. We talk a lot about here about Zephyr and our services and asset managers, through reporting, through data, through analytics, telling your story. And you touched on it, and that's very important. So, can you go a little bit deeper on why is storytelling so important for asset managers?
So I think it's an opportunity for managers really to share, I almost say on a personal level, like who they are. One of the things I love when we talk about storytelling is bringing in that personal piece of it, right? Like how
Mhm.
you got started, your own experiences, and sort of tying those two together between personal and professional. I think that when people start talking about building a business and telling the story about how they got from point A to today, there's a lot of passion that comes from that with people. There's it becomes a much more personal, like emotional thing. And I think that people relate to that. It humanizes who we are. And, there's, other banter that comes off of that because you've got shared experiences and just things that you like. So I think, a big part of that is just, sharing the uniqueness of who you are and letting people see on a personal and professional level where you've come from and where that success comes from, right? We're all human beings, and I know that we relate to our clients very much on that level, and we love telling our story.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And you talked about personalization now more than ever. Years ago, again, when I started way back 20 some years ago, it was just all about returns,
Right.
analytics. Now it's more about like, I'm giving you my money to invest. Who are you? Right?
Right.
Get to know you. We've had so many, the Bernie Madoffs of the world, and that's just, the top one. But who am I sending my money to? It's so important. And now that personalized touch and getting to know the person is
Right.
so important. And like you said, that storytelling gives you that opportunity.
I love hearing a good story with the managers we work with, and it's not it's not just the networking, it's building relationships, right? You're building friendships on top of that. And that's one thing I've
Mm,
learned a lot about over the last year and a half. You're building these long-standing relationships that are beneficial from a business perspective, but then they become your friends in many ways. And so that's
yeah.
one of the things that I think is different too. That networking is just great for so many reasons.
And I'm just always a sucker for a good story.
Yeah,
And
me too.
that's why some people tell me, Ryan, you should probably do a adjusted for risk after dark. But the-
You should. Yeah, me too. I love hearing a great story. And like I said, I really love telling ours because I feel like it's a little
yes,
bit different.
I love it too. And I enjoy telling Zephyr's story and why it's created, founded on
Yeah.
the shores of Lake Tahoe. Always a good story behind
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
So storytelling, what are some tips to creating a captivating, compelling story? I often say, you got to be good at storytelling, but you just can't tell the story for the sake of telling the story. You've got to do it with integrity, and it's got to be a compelling story. But what are some tips to help differentiate yourself from competitors when doing that story?
I think again, it's knowing, what the competitive landscape is, who are your, not just your target audience, right? You want to speak to your target audience, and so it's knowing who they are and doing your research on them. And then I think, another piece of it is having consistency with that story. Like when we talk about like presenting, right? You've got your marketing pieces, they've gone out, you're getting ready to meet with an investor. You've got 3 portfolio managers, and there's one really great presenter that can just tell the story. He knows every moving part of it. He's helped build that story, with the marketing team and whatnot, and he can answer any question. And I think that and we used to do this with managers a lot, we'd always take that strongest presenter because there was nothing that they couldn't answer, but they could tell a really great story
Mhm.
about, the strategies and how they do what they do and why there's a value add. And, I think that's so important. If you can't relay the message in a very strong, compelling way, then I think you can sort of lose traction,
Yeah.
right? When you're in a meeting, and that could make or break, winning that mandate or not. So I think it's just having that, that strong presentation, having that strong content, and all of that that backs up, who you are, what your strategies are, why they're successful, why there's a
Mhm.
value add, things like that.
I love that you brought up consistency. I often sometimes forget about that word consistency, but how important it is, especially in asset management when all the different teams have to be on a consistent rapport and understand, the strategy, exactly what that strategy is, whether it's obviously sales, like you talked about, marketing, the investment team, and compliance. You can't forget about compliance, whether you want to or not. Like,
Right.
how
Well,
what ways can firms effectively integrate all those appropriate teams, make sure the messaging is consistent across the board, so you your returns and your analytics are consistent with what marketing is saying?
so I like it when our firms have a very streamlined process, right? Their sales and
Yeah.
marketing are intact, and they've got a plan. Like everything, I think, really needs to have a plan. And in terms of the marketing, like building all that collateral and all of that information, they're dealing with the analytics team, but they also need to be working with the sales guys. Like we said, the sales guys are out presenting this stuff. Having this consistency between all of the collateral that they're putting out, right? And then you're putting this data into the databases, and they're going into the fact sheets and whatnot. But one thing we always say too is that your marketing presentations are that first step that are getting you sort of in the door
Mhm.
after they've screened you in a database. So of course everything needs to tie together. But the second piece to that is typically you're going to get followed up with an RFP. So within the RFPs, it's making sure, again, the messaging is really clear and consistent with everything else that you're giving them, because they're starting in one place, and it may be the database. And so they've done their due diligence, they're looking at everything. They've got your marketing materials, and then they've got your RFP. They're going to look at everything to make sure everything is consistent across the board. And so it takes all of those teams working together, right? The marketing and sales, the marketing and the analytics side of people that are doing the work, compliance to make sure that the GIP stuff and everything that's in the presentations are good, and that they're meeting the guidelines when it comes to marketing, right? There's all of those rules around marketing. And so making sure that compliance is, in line and in check with them doing what they need to be doing within the market. So I think it really is about strong communication across teams.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One thing that we do at Zephyr and I do with asset management firms is they'll send me a product, one of their strategies, and I'll just use Zephyr to look at their analytics, look at their returns, and dig deep into the risk. And are the analytics and performance matching the marketing and the messaging?
Right.
If the messaging is stating that it is, protects on the downside when markets crash or there's volatility, is the performance really doing that? Or is it just more marketing slogan, or maybe they should change the analytics to match the messaging. So it's very important because if you see it's not matching with that messaging. All of a sudden, it kind of raises some red flags.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just about, okay, you've got this great presentation. Now you've got this great presenter. He's going to go in and tell this fantastic story, but then some of that data is not really tying out to it. And we'll get into that, I'm sure, more, but yeah, it really is about consistency and
Yeah.
across all areas, because everything ties together in one way or another.
And making sure you're all on the same page, because when
Right.
whether it's an institution or a financial advisor doing a manager due diligence, they're going to ask some of those questions and
Yeah,
making sure everyone's on the same page and their
exactly.
performance answers.
Exactly.
Well. You know, we recently released the PSN mid-year outlook for 2024, and you contributed an article. Is a fantastic article. Thank you. Consulting databases, creating profiles that increase opportunity to raise AUM. So, why is it important for asset managers to contribute to a database?
Consultant databases are where investors and consultants and other, investors, institutional retail, start when they're looking to source managers for mandates, right? And so these databases are a very critical first step for them. And they're also a precursor to getting an actual RFP. And so that's why we push so hard for managers to A, be in the databases, but B, make sure that they are building as comprehensive as they can. And the other thing to that is, all of the analytics products on the backside, a lot of subscribers to the analytics like you guys have, and some of the others are used by even, internal investment managers, just for their own different reasons. But those analytics become a very valuable tool to managers, and they're not even having to do anything but, reporting to the database, get your data in. And there's so many opportunities because you've got thousands of investors purchasing these subscriptions. So it just opens up a Pandora's box for them to gain access to all of this search activity through visibility.
Fantastic. And when you talk about, you know, the investors, financial advisors, or institutions,
Right.
that's maybe their first step to finding you as an asset manager. So you have to make
Right.
sure your data in that database is complete, um, accurate. So, what are some important considerations asset managers should take into account when they're creating those database profiles? Because, at PSN, there's over 200 fields an asset
I
manager
know.
could. There is a lot.
I know
Yes,
well.
Um, what should asset managers take in consideration? Maybe they just should go with IMSS and have you guys handle it.
Well, thank
But
you.
but what are some of the critical items managers need to populate?
So, and I do actually have a story on that if we have time, but so it really is about, of course, performance, assets, and those fundamental characteristics. Hands down, needs to be done. The other pieces of that they miss is going through and checking their GIFs. The dates are different than the actual letter. They're not updated. But the other thing is the GIFs dates sometimes in the databases are in 3 different places, and managers don't know that. So there becomes this inconsistency. So a lot of it is really understanding the databases themselves and how to navigate them. Any of their legal docs, their ADVs, prospectus, if they've got, they've got mutual funds that are up on them. We come across things all the time where things are outdated and whatnot. It's not just about the data. It's about having the narratives done and having them clean and matching their marketing pieces and their,
Yeah.
those things that tie out to the RFPs again. It's, the legal docs, the employees, right? Your professional teams are often listed by name. There's profiles for just the investment
Mhm.
professionals, and making sure that you don't have somebody in there that was gone, a year ago, and the new portfolio manager never made the list. So it's a lot of those, intricacies of the databases that we find when we start working with managers where, there's a lot of either inconsistency or a lot of deficits or a lot of missing historical information, and managers don't really know that.
Mhm.
They're not aware of that. And that's, that's my story about, a client that we're working with, and we can get to that if we have time. But I just, as an example of what, managers think that they're okay, but they're really not quite as okay as they think they are.
I love stories and examples, so go ahead, share it.
So we have a newest client that we had worked with, really great group. They came to us on referral, and they felt like they were in good shape. They were an emerging manager, but they just, had a salesperson dealing with the databases little overwhelmed. And so, we had a conversation with them, literally got hired the same day. Awesome group. But we started going in and looking at everything. And there was so many quarters of missing data there, assets, just information, dates were all over the map for GIPs, for,
Mhm.
start dates, for different things, and just so many inconsistencies. So, our goal is, when we work with the manager, we go in and we audit their databases, right? We don't want to just go in and plug in information, right? We're total end to end. Like, they hired us to sit in that room right next to them as if we were an employee, and go back and really clean these databases up and make sure that, they are telling their story. Because if they're missing data or they've got incorrect information, the story that they're telling while they're out there and they're doing meetings isn't going to match what investors are seeing in the database. That also being said, missing those data points, they're going to miss out on analytic search. Like, they're going to miss out on those because they don't have all the information, and it's going to kick them out immediately. So our goal is to go back and, at least 3 to 5 years, typically 5, and clean up everything that is missing so that they have a much better opportunity. That's our job. And this is why I think we're different too, is that this was what I did most of my career. So I understood the depth of the details, and that never
Mhm.
shifted when I started, IMSS. It's like, I want to give these managers that same level of service, because that's our job, is to get them into this, this search activity, right? They're paying us to bring visibility and whatnot. And, if we're not doing that to that level, then it's like they're just, they're paying to have some data thrown in, and nobody really knows what it's doing. So, yeah, it's interesting. We find that with a lot of managers. It really is a common practice that they think they're okay, but so we always do it as part of our process. We go in and do a full audit to see what they're like.
That's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. And a couple of things. So, like you said, usually searching, through Zephyr, or something, that's the first step of locating managers. And you don't want to be kicked out during that first step
Right,
because maybe you just overlooked a data point,
right,
something that's easy that could have been corrected. That's
right,
number one. Number two, going back to storytelling, making
yes,
sure that data in that database matches the story you're trying to tell. And then three, it all kind of comes together here.
yeah,
You talked about personalization, needing to know who is managing the money, who is the firm, that personal touch. You can do that in the database also by
right,
providing names. It's so important.
right. You're right. It's true. It's true. Everything is really about its relationships. I think it's, you can be a great manager, and the relationship is just not working for personalities or for other reasons. So there's so many factors that come into why managers get hired besides having these great products.
Yeah. So we're talking about that database and the database profile and what's important. What are some areas that maybe asset managers tend to overlook when contributing their strategies?
One of the biggest things that we've seen lately with the some of our new clients is those assets under management and not understanding how they break down. So within most of the databases, wrap accounts are considered one account. We
Yeah.
we had a firm that had a couple of hundred participants within a wrap account, and they were counting every client. And so the assets, nothing was making sense, because when you look at an ADV, it captures it the same way the databases do. And so the ADV is saying one thing, but then if you were to go to look at a database, and I pull ADVs on every single client we have before I even talk with them. So I'm looking at, and so that's how these conversations come up. The assets don't make any sense. Half of the buckets aren't even filled out. And so there's screens that are based off of that. Like, how many
Mhm.
assets do you have in US equities, and how many do you have in just all different buckets? And there's, one number. There's like firm assets, no taxable, tax exempt, and they've got 150 clients when actually they've got 43 or something. And, so it's some of that discrepancy that we see. And another piece would be like portfolios. And I've talked about this before. It's always an example. That representative account that you're uploading, making sure that, that everything ties out to it. So your sector
Mhm.
breakdowns, market caps, country allocations, your cash levels, top 10% of holdings, all should tie back to that representative portfolio. Because when an investor pulls that portfolio and they start to analyze it, and it's not tying back to the data that you've got in there, all it does is raise questions, right? And so we are sticklers about that as well, and making sure that all that data is in there. Some of the databases that weren't collecting net performance, they were doing gross only on composites. There was a new rule that came out. Many of them weren't aware. So some of the new ones that came on had no idea that they were required to report it. So we backfilled. And so it's some of those things. They don't necessarily understand that everything really is important in the databases, and skipping, one section because you don't have it or the time to do it can be very impactful.
I'm really glad you brought up the marketing rule. What was it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? We changed a lot of things within the database. But do you still think it's an issue that, they're not contributing both net and gross returns, or now is it more doubt? Was it an issue?
We were told for separately managed account composites that it was now a requirement. And so I remember going back and doing some reading on it and whatnot, and it looked like it was something that had to be done. So we went back, for the managers that weren't providing it. I mean, most do when they have a composite, but for some that weren't, went backfilled it just to make sure that they were meeting that level of requirement that was, asked. But others, they just wasn't important.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know the rhyme or rhythm behind things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we spend a lot of time here talking about it, like how to make sure asset managers can be in compliance, whether it's the Top Gun reports that we produce and stuff like that. Trisha, thank you so much. So we're talking about storytelling, a lot of stories. I like to end the conversation with something fun. It could be business related. I'm not saying that's not fun, but any fun stories recently this summer that you've experienced? It could be, like I said, work related, market related, that you'd like to share.
I'm trying to think. I've spent a lot of time working this summer. We have had a very, very busy year, which is good. I'm trying to think if I've got any really funny stories. I probably will next week. I'm taking a day off to the venue with my girlfriends.
Yes.
I don't have anything, don't have anything that's funny, I guess, to speak of off the top of my head. And well, that's not really personal related. That would be funny, but my sister and I actually are getting ready to go on vacation. And maybe this is sort of funny. You may or may not keep it, but we're getting ready to go on our annual vacation. My twin sister celebrate her birthday every year in Aruba. And so last year we went to Block Island. It was about 3 weeks before. She had new flip-flops on, tripped off the edge of the curb when we were heading to the ferry, face first, split her head open, ambulance ride to the hospital. 4 hours later, we finally got to Block Island, like at 7:30 at night or something. And I was just like, what the? Of course, it was an accident. Fast forward 3 weeks later, we go to Aruba. We're there for a month. Now, this is a big trip for us. We had turned 50 a few years ago. We wanted to do something great. I worked most of the time, or almost all the time. Going to dinner the night of our birthday, same thing, new shoes, tripped off the curb, broke her foot, didn't realize it. We were at a restaurant where we knew the staff, so they took care of her foot up ice. She ended up in a wheelchair for the last 2 weeks of it. So I was pushing her around for 2 weeks. So as I'm getting ready to go to Aruba next month with her again, I said, no new shoes, no new shoes allowed. We're going to be walking this whole 10 days while we're there on 2 flat feet.
Yes,
so
maybe
that's my
just wear
funny
tennis
story.
shoes or something.
I know, you know what? And that's what I said to her. I was like, there'll be no new shoes, none of those flip-flop things. You need like solid based shoes. Like I felt bad for her. It was just 2 random accidents. It was no alcohol involved or anything. It was just, she just fell. She's not as steady on her feet. And yeah, I was just giving her a hard time about that. So we do laugh about it now because it was just 3 weeks apart from each other. But the fact that she broke her foot while she was there, it was like, we were 2 weeks in. And I had just literally that Friday took a half day. I'd worked the first 2 weeks till 4 o'clock every day, and took that afternoon. I was all excited to go to dinner. I was excited to have the whole next week off. And then I just worked the whole time because she couldn't leave the room for 6 days. And
my gosh.
It's funny now. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, it was an accident and she didn't get seriously hurt, but we do chuckle about that one. So we'll see what happens in 5 weeks.
My family, we just got back from vacation, and there's a family wedding in Vail. So we were in Vail, and when my whole family gets together, usually something like that happens. And we're like, oh gosh, what's it going to be this time? who's gonna do it? What's gonna happen? And thankfully, and it was uneventful. It was a good
Good.
vacation. So
That's always a good thing.
yes, it is, especially with my
Yes.
family. Usually
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
chaotic happens, but
I get it.
with that, I have a 6-year-old son who's going to be 7 here in a week, and living in
Oh,
Tahoe, I always try and wonder, is he just going to get immune to living in the mountains? And we go to Vail, which is kind of similar to Tahoe.
right.
And it's like, Oliver, look at all these beautiful mountains. Look how big they are and stuff. And he's like, whatever, Dad. I see it. I live in them. And it's like, this is
We got
exactly what I don't
mountains.
want to happen.
Oh, just different mountains. Maybe as he gets older, there'll be different mountains that and
Yes.
to him versus other mountains. He has a
Yes.
6-year-old, but he'll have
Exactly.
an appreciation for it. I'm sure if he's skiing out there too,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So
Yes.
he's living a life for a 6-year-old. Don't feel bad for Oliver.
Good. Oh my God, what a cute name.
So
That's so cute.
Trisha, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was really a fun conversation on a very important topic that I think, isn't talked about enough, especially in
Okay.
the importance of storytelling. Thank you for
Right.
coming on the show. Zan, where can our audience get more information about IMSS?
So they can go to our website, www.imss-llc.com. They can find me on LinkedIn, Patricia O'Donnell. We also have a LinkedIn page, not as built up. And there's a lot of great information on our site. We're also part of some industry magazines. Yeah, just Google IMSS Data Centrics and we should pop right up for them.
Yeah, you guys have some fantastic resources on your website, white papers. You're doing some great webinars, very
Yeah.
good stuff to help the asset management space. But also, we're focusing on asset managers, but storytelling is important across the page. So even though we're focusing on asset managers, this is something financial advisors too, I think, can take a lot
Right.
from in terms of
I think,
telling their
yeah,
story.
I think any company, anybody who's running a business, storytelling is the foundation of like building brand, gaining recognition. And we were learning that this last probably year and a half because we launched Data Centrics. We kind of beta tested it for a while, and then we brought it to market. And we're realizing how hard it is to be, even though I've been in the industry 30 years, how hard it is to have a new technology out there that does what only a handful of competitors
Mhm.
really do. And we try to show how we're unique, right? We're just different in how we do things, which is why clients hire us. And like I said,
Mhm.
90% of that is based on referral, and we just love that.
Yeah.
So I get it that I think it's across every industry, but it's just
Yep.
how you do it.
Yep. Exactly. Trisha, thank you so much. Such a fun
Thank you, Ryan.
conversation. Honor to have you on. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Zephyr's Adjusted for Risk podcast. You can watch all of our other podcasts on the Zephyr YouTube channel, as well as on Spotify and iHeartRadio. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Ryan. It was good to be on.